Do you want the mic?
If that would work better for everybody, maybe. Might help if I turn it on, eh? Is that better for everybody? Yes. All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming today. I always start out this presentation with a video to kind of lighten the mood a little bit here. And so I'll give you a brief rundown of what you're seeing on the screen here. This is back January 1st of 2009. I was working night shift with my partner. So it's New Year's Eve. We're on a traffic stop right in front of Manistee Catholic Central. I'm sure most of you know where that's at, right on US 31. And the city at this time was lodging somebody at the jail, so they didn't have a car in town. And while we're on this traffic stop, there is nothing significant about this stop at all. We were just about ready to clear it. My partner had actually already shut off the camera. They call it a fight in progress. And everybody has moments in their career where they learn a very valuable lesson. I'll try to stay out of everybody's way here as I narrate the video. So they call it this fight in progress. I had only been working here about 2 years at that point. I was still a pretty young deputy, and fights in progress are exciting calls. So I learned a very valuable lesson about pumping the brakes a little bit and taking our time if you're going to head out to something like that, and you'll see that learning experience right now. Alright, I want you to notice how fast I got up though, right? I was right up on my feet, reflexing like a cat, I think they say. So. Now, if you listen to the audio from that, there's a little beep at the end, and what that is, our cameras in our cars, if you shut the camera off, and then you hit record, it records 30 seconds prior to when you hit that button. So my partner's first reaction was not, hey, is he alright? Is he going to get hit by a car? His first thought was, I need to hit record so that I can record this moment and relive it over and over again for the rest of his career. And at the time, Dale Gutowski was the sheriff, and I remember getting called into his office shortly after this happened. And anybody who's ever been called in the boss's office is pretty nerve-wracking experience, right? So I get in there and he's got this video playing on a loop on his desktop. He says, Brian, I think I could get you on TV. I want to send this to Fox and Friends. I think they'd put you on TV. And I said, well, with all due respect, Sheriff, if it's going anywhere, it's the funniest home videos, so maybe I can win $10,000 or something, to learn from that experience. But anyway, I always show that in the beginning. This is a tough conversation. I want to thank you all for being here. Like I've talked about in all these presentations, this isn't a conversation that any of us ever thought we were going to have. But unfortunately, for any of us who've watched the news or the stuff out of Parkland, the more recent one that just happened the other day, this is a necessary conversation we have to have. Okay? For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Brian Gutowski. I'm a lieutenant at the Sheriff's Office. I'm also the Emergency Management Coordinator. That encompasses a lot of different things that I take care of, but part of that, my job, is public education. Right, pressing important public safety stuff out to people, and making sure that we're doing our due diligence to improve our response to situations like active shooter situations. So I've been with the Sheriff's Office since 2007, just a hair over 11 years now. And for 5 of those 11 years, I spent on our emergency response team, which is our version of SWAT. Right, so we have a regional ERT team. They cover 19 counties in northern Michigan. So we all mobilize if we have significant events like an active shooter, hostage situation, high-risk warrant entries, things like that. And the reason I share that with you is because during the presentation today, we're going to talk about some physiological and psychological responses that we as human beings are going to experience if we find ourselves in an active shooter type situation, okay? I want you to be aware of that. Our body's never going to go somewhere our mind hasn't been before, so it's important for you to think about these things, to know that these physiological and psychological reactions are going to happen so that you can notice it, you can try to bring yourself down and calm yourself down a little bit. So before we get started, a couple quick things. Like I said before, this is a tough conversation, and the purpose of this presentation is not to scare you, okay? I'm not out here trying to scare you guys, but we all turn on the TV every day, right? We see the things that are happening in the world. But what this presentation does is it's not meant to scare you, it's meant to give you proactive things that you can do if you find yourself in a situation like this. Does anybody think this could not happen here? That's great. I actually had somebody in a presentation I gave recently who raised their hand and said, no, I don't think it could. I feel way too safe in this community. And that's an unfortunate attitude. You know, when I got hired by the sheriff's office, everybody said, well, at least you're in Manistee, at least you'll be safe, right? And then, you know, we lost Trooper Butterfield on a traffic stop a couple of years back. We had an officer-involved shooting here in the city of Manistee. There's been several in Mason County over the past few years. Bad things do happen here. They don't happen with severity or the frequency a lot of times that they do in other places in bigger cities. But it is capable of happening here. So we need people to realize that, and, you know, burying our head in the sand and just pretending that this could never happen here is not the right solution. So that's part of this program. Does anybody think we can change the trend of active shooter type situations? Yeah, I don't think we can either, but this is what we can change. I like to talk about 9/11. So prior to 9/11, what did they always tell us if you were on a plane that was hijacked, right? Stay calm, right? Stay in your seat. Listen to what the hijackers have to say. Eventually they're going to run out of gas, they're going to land somewhere, and we're going to negotiate your release as a hostage, right? That's what we did for hijackings prior to 9/11. So fast forward post 9/11, what happens today if you stand up on an airplane and try to hijack it? Everybody else stands up too, right? And they proceed to pound you into the ground, right? That's the shift in mentality that we've had in the United States and as a people. We're not going to be the next 9/11 attack, right? We're not going to be on that next plane. So when somebody stands up and tries to do something on an airplane, we as people have made that decision prior to even getting on a plane that we're going to stand up and we're going to fight for ourselves, or we're going to do proactive things to prevent another attack like that. We need to have that same mindset shift with active shooter type situations, right? Instead of the old hide and hope and pray that we make it through, we need to be doing proactive things to help ourselves and others if we find ourselves in a situation like that. And that's what this presentation is about. I will answer any questions you have. I'm a pretty laid-back presenter. If you have a question and you'd like to ask it, you're afraid you're going to forget it by the end, shoot your hand up. We can usually answer it pretty quickly. I do usually have a little time at the end of the presentation where we can address some of those things. A lot of times there are CPL questions, things like that, that people just want to know how they fit into this response. And we can talk about all those at the end of the presentation too. So the first time I gave this was to a women's group, and they had me come into the bungalow and give the presentation in that side room that they have there at the bungalow. And the presentation went really, really well. And for any of you who ever taught anything, it's really nerve-wracking to come into a situation that you've never taught before. I'm not a teacher by trade, I'm a cop, right? So I'm used to talking to people, but not necessarily in front of people. So I was pretty nervous. You don't know how the material's going to go over, you don't know how you're going to be as an instructor. So after that, I kind of tried to sit down and break down how it went so well, what I did to make things go that well. And as I started to break it down, I realized that all these ladies had eaten dinner and had a couple drinks before I went out. And my wife always tells me I'm funnier and better looking when she's been drinking. So I don't know if that was all of it. You know, I've gotten really comfortable giving this presentation, so I've done it about 20 times. I've got 27 more sessions scheduled through the end of April, including the casino, all of their staff. So I will have trained over 1,000 people in the month of April alone. It's a really great presentation that people have really taken to, and I think it's really valuable information. So I appreciate you all being here. This conversation that we're going to have today is the first step in trying to change the way we handle these things. I will give you a quick disclaimer. We are going to watch some videos in here. Now, there's no graphic violence, right? So there's not going to be but you're not going to see people getting shot. But what you are going to see is and hear from are people who have been through these types of situations or who are going through them at the time. And some people might find that disturbing. I haven't had anybody walk out on me yet or not like the material. But feel free, if you're seeing something up here that is not making you comfortable, feel free to step out for just a moment. I'll let you know when the video is done and we'll bring you back in. So the biggest question that we get from this presentation is, does this stuff work? So that's the ultimate question, right? We're going to talk about Virginia Tech and how kind of almost unknowingly some of the people in that shooting use some of the tactics we're going to talk about today. And it really does save lives. But the thing is, like I said before, our body's not going to go somewhere that our mind hasn't been before. So unless we have important conversations like the one we're having today with people who have never really thought about how they would react in a situation like this, it's hard for us to get there, right? That's why this is so important. So I want to thank you guys for coming and having me here today. So the quick outline of what we're going to talk about today. The first is disaster response psychology. We're going to talk about the physiological and psychological effects that we're going to go through when we're dealing with a disaster type response as human beings. The second is active shooter events themselves. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the shooters and where they happen. And then we're going to get to the civilian response to active shooter events, which is the things that you can do in the meantime between when law enforcement gets the call about these things and when we arrive to take care of that threat, the things you can be doing in the meantime to help save lives. So in 1999, there was an incident that happened in the United States that really started to shift the way law enforcement reacted to active shooter events. Does anybody remember what that was?
Columbine.
Columbine High School shooting, right? Prior to Columbine, law enforcement response for our regular patrol guys was easy. We showed up, we surrounded it, right? We made sure bad things didn't leave that area, that they stayed contained. We made sure nobody got in to endanger themselves further, and we waited for SWAT cops to get there. SWAT cops had heavy bulletproof vests, they had helmets, they had rifles, they could come in and take care of a threat like an active shooter. We don't do that anymore. We had a mindset shift after Columbine, because 32 minutes these guys were inside that school, right? They committed suicide 2 minutes after the first SWAT team made entry to that building. We need to get our guys in there quick. So if any of you have seen the paper, we did a revenue sharing grant. All my road patrol guys, all the city road patrol guys, we all have heavy armor, we all have ballistic vests, and we all carry rifles so that we can immediately address a threat like an active shooter, right? We're not waiting for SWAT cops to come anymore. We don't have the time to do that. People are getting hurt continuously while we sit there and wait outside, so we're not doing that anymore. I promise you, I don't know what happened in Parkland with that officer, that there's been a lot of, controversy about him waiting outside, but if my guy is if there's one deputy who shows up and he's by himself, he's coming in to deal with that threat by himself. We're not waiting outside for other people to get there. So, Patty Nielsen was a teacher at Columbine High School. She was working hall duty the morning that this shooting started. And this is her 911 call. You can really hear some of the desperation in her voice, and you can tell that she's never really thought about having to deal with this type of incident. You know, she kind of walks you through her thought process and what she told her kids to do, and it's a really powerful video.
Jefferson County 911. Yes, I just called my Facebook. There is a big terrible gun. It was shot out a window. I believe by the Columbine High School. I don't know what's in my shoulder. If it was just a last week or what. Okay, is anything of injured, ma'am? Yes. Okay. I was going to the panic, and I hit the library. I thought, young, I'm at the table, kid. Hands under the table. Our kids are training, and listen to our time kids told us we need to be careful. Okay, we're getting them there. Who's the student, ma'am? I do not know who the student is. Okay. I thought I was in Harvard out there, God. Okay. I was on Harvard. I apologize. I said, what's going on out there? Because I was finally jumping up and I said, probably a joke. I said, well, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't want to walk outside. I can see this damn see what was going on. He turned the gun straight at us and shot. And my God, the window went out. And the kid standing there with me. I think he got hit. Okay. Something in my shoulder. Okay. We've got help on the way, ma'am. Okay. Okay. Oh, God. Stay in line with me. Oh, God. Do we know where he's at? I'm sorry? Do we know where he's at? Okay. On the library, he's upstairs. He's right outside of here. He's outside? He's outside of the hall. Outside of the hall or outside of the hall? Okay. There are alarms and things going off there. Smoke. My God's smoke is like coming into the school. Okay. I've got the kids under the table here. I don't know what's happening in the rest of the building. I think that's smoking. You know, right? I'm sure someone has been calling 911. Yes, we've got a lot of people on. Okay. I just want you to stay in the line with me. We need to know what's going on. Okay.
Pretty powerful video, right? You can really hear the desperation in Patty's voice. She's never thought about what she would do. We never had to think about that, right? This is something that, as educators, when our teachers go into schools, that this is the last thing we ever thought we'd have to be dealing with. You know, she told her kids to do what we've known best, which is to hide under the tables, right? There are things that we can do and things that we will talk about in this presentation that we can be proactively doing rather than just putting people under tables to help combat this threat. So this video is not an actual video from Columbine. It is a representation of what happened that day. But there's two reasons they put this video in the presentation. The first is to show the chaos that's going to ensue when something like this jumps off. In the video, you actually see people run towards where the shooters are coming from because there's that mass confusion. It's going to be really loud. It's going to be really chaotic. The second reason, and the real reason they really want us to show this, is to just show some of the brutality and the way these people are doing these acts. So we've heard a lot of people say, oh, maybe we could talk them down, right? Maybe if we just communicate with them, we can get them to reason. These kids in this video are laughing, just like they did in Columbine, as they're shooting kids in schools, right? They're laughing. This is something they thought thoroughly about. If somebody brings a gun into a space and starts shooting at people, they know the consequences of those actions, right? We are beyond negotiation with these people. So what I want you to do is not think about maybe I can proactively, try to talk to that person or try to talk them down. We're past the point of negotiation at this point. These people know the consequences of their actions, and we need to move right past that notion that we can reason with them and get right to doing proactive things to help ourselves and others. One thing you will not hear me do during this presentation is name any of the people who perpetrated these acts. The United States media, the world media does a really good job of making these people famous. It's part of the reason that they do the acts that they do. They want to live forever, right? So you won't hear me talk about any of them, and I just think it's really unfortunate because the majority of you could probably name the Columbine high school shooters. Very few of you probably have ever heard of Patty Nielsen or the other victims of Columbine. So we're not going to talk about them today. So let's get into disaster response, the background science of how people behave in high stress events. These are the 3 stages of disaster response that we as all human beings are going to go through, right? The first is denial. You actually heard Patty Nielsen walk you through her denial phase in her 911 call. She says, I was on hall duty, I saw a student with a gun, I said, what's going on? Oh, that must be a film production. And I said, well, that's a terrible idea. This is denial. This is our human brain trying to make sense of bad things that we're seeing, right? Can't be bad things happening. There has to be a rational explanation for what we're seeing. That's denial. Failing to immediately accept that bad things could be happening in front of us. The quicker we can get you through denial, it's part of this conversation, and get you to a deliberation phase, the more effective we're going to be at helping ourselves and others. We get to that deliberation phase, that's where you're going to decide which one of the 3 techniques we're going to use, or that we're going to talk about today, you're going to use to try to help yourself. Avoid, deny, and defend. That's the 3 core basic principles of this program, right? ADD. Once you get to that deliberation phase, you figure out what your best option is in that circumstance. We can get you right to a decisive moment where you can make decisions and take action that will help yourself or others. So a lot of our stress response and the things that happen to us as human beings is because of our heart rate, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about our heart rates. Typically, sitting here relaxed in a room watching a presentation, we're all around 60 beats per minute heart rate wise, right? That's kind of our homeostasis. Now it can vary depending on your physical fitness, your age, things like that. But for the most part, that's the human being resting heart rate. As we start to experience a stressful incident, an active shooter, a fire, something that raises that heart rate, certain things happen to our body. As we get up to about 90 beats per minute, we start to lose fine motor function. This is why we don't have teachers use keys when they're doing lockdowns, right? We all have the night lock system. It's a gross motor skill. How many of you have ever, had an armful of groceries, tried to find the right key for your house and unlock the door? Sometimes that can be difficult, right? Can you imagine somebody shooting outside your door, having to find first the correct key on your key ring, second of all, stick it into that lock and physically manipulate that lock to make it work, all under that kind of pressure. It's hard with our groceries in our hand. Can you imagine if something like that was going on outside the room? So we don't use fine motor skill options when we're doing lockdowns in schools anymore. We have gross motor skills, right? The night lock is gross, we just drop it in the door. Some of the other things that happen as we continue to increase, we get to 120 beats per minute. This is where we're faster, we're stronger, and we bleed less, right, as human beings. How many remember the show Rescue 911? William Shatner narrated it. Okay, I got a couple hands up in the crowd. He would, narrate 911 responses. People call 911, the incident that happened, and how law enforcement or EMS or fire responded to that. I remember an episode where a gentleman was fixing his car and he wasn't using a jack stand, and the car fell on top of him. His neighbor actually runs over and lifts the car off the top of him. Right? That's 120 beats per minute. We're faster, we're stronger, and we bleed less. Our body naturally brings our blood to our core, right, to support our internal organs. It's a safety mechanism that our body automatically does when we get into that high elevated threat area for our body. As we continue to increase, we get to 150, 175 beats per minute. We're losing gross motor skills. We're losing the human side of our brain, right? We get sucked down into that lizard brain where we can't make good decisions. The reason I tell you this is because you need to realize when you start feeling this response to this event, when you're in it, you need to realize your heart rate's elevating and you need to take some steps to calm yourself down. We're going to go through one way you can do that a little bit down the line in the presentation, but you need to be aware that these things are going to happen so that you can try to combat them by taking some deep breaths and getting yourself calmed down. So a lot of the core of this presentation is very simple, and it's about paying attention. Where's the majority of people's attention nowadays? Right here, right? People, I would say kids, but I have social media too. Everybody's looking to post the next picture, the next selfie, their next Snapchat video. Everybody is centered around their phone. If we just take a moment when we're going into new places or we're at events or we're out in different areas in our lives, if we just pay attention to some of our surroundings, I think we can do a lot to combat some of the early stages of these things. So the first one on here is analyze your surroundings and potential threats. I teach new cops down at West Shore Community in their police academy, and one of the questions we always get down there is, how can I make myself a good police officer? I want to be a really good cop. How can I do that? And I tell them one of the ways to do that is to play a game that you played when you were a little kid, which is which one of these things is not like the other, right? You know, cops always go with that instinct. We get that feeling. We spend our whole lives, all of us spend our whole lives interacting with other human beings. We've all had that interaction that we sit back in our head and go, you know, something's just not right here. We see something and we think to ourselves, something's not right here. But a lot of times we dismiss that thought, right? We don't pay much attention to it other than that initial, oh, that's weird. I want you to start paying attention to the things that are not like the others. In the video at the end of this presentation, there's a short clip where a gentleman's walking into it like a big box store with a heavy duffel bag, right? This thing is not like the others. People carry bags out of Walmart or a Meijer or something like that, but typically they're not carrying big heavy duffel bags in. This thing is not like the others. We should be paying attention. Now, I'm not saying go tackle the guy, right, and be doing your karate moves on him, but what I'm saying is at least be paying attention to that and start running some scenarios. Hey, what am I going to do if bad things start to happen here? I give this presentation to a lot of business owners, and this next bullet point is analyze your daily routines and figure out where you're the most vulnerable. This is the business owner who closes up shop every night at 10 and walks out the back door at 10:10 with their money bag, right? This is a vulnerability in an area in our life where people can, if they want to take advantage of us, can take advantage of us. I also talk about this with our schools. We have single point access for our schools. A lot of times the custodians, because they don't like to have to key in the door, will leave that back door propped. And I tell them, if you think your kids at your school don't know that back door gets propped, you're wrong, right? The best people who know how to get things in and out of schools are the kids themselves, because they see what happens in the daily, day-to-day operation. So look at your daily routines. You know, a lot of this stuff is an integrity issue, you know, making sure that everybody's conforming to those places in your everyday space. Have a plan of escape and a backup plan. We're going to talk about the Station nightclub fire in the next couple slides here, and you know, a lot of this has to do with knowing how to get out of places. So, you know, a lot of us, and you know, if you frequent this building here, you know that there's multiple entrances and exits, right? You're familiar with it. But how many of us go into a new space, you stop at a restaurant while you're on vacation, or stop somewhere that you haven't been before? Take the time to just look at how we could get out of there if bad things happen. Firefighters do a fantastic job of telling us how to get out of places, right? If you look at all the entrances and exits, there's big lit signs that says exit. But how many times do we take just that split second when we walk into a new place to just look and see what our options are to get out? I'm asking you to do that. You do that?
All the time, all the time.
Excellent. Fantastic. Awesome. The other thing we teach our cops in the academy is to constantly be running scenarios through your mind. Visualize potential encounters and how you respond to those if bad things start to happen, right? So cops in general, anytime you're interacting with them on a complaint, are constantly analyzing the people we're dealing with, right? We're really good at reading body language, but we're always prepared and thinking in our minds, what if this person attacks me now? What if things go bad now? A lot of cops you see, just like I'm doing here, talk with our hands up, right? We talk with our hands a lot. A lot of police officers do this. This is a survival mechanism for us. We always have our hands up while we're talking so that if you attack me, my hand is here instead of having to come from down here, right? It's just something we learn. But I'm asking you to, if you see that gentleman walking into Walmart with that heavy duffel bag, maybe you're not tackling him yet, but you're thinking in your mind, man, that something's not right here. What are my options if things start to go bad? Where am I going to go? How am I going to react to that? Run that scenario through your mind if you get that feeling. And stay in that condition yellow. Keep your heart rate down so that you can effectively respond with our human brain and not just that lizard brain. So we talked about exits. Does anybody remember the Station nightclub fire happened in Rhode Island during a Great White concert? Any hard rockers in here? No? All right. All right, so the Station nightclub, there was a lot of things that combined to make a really bad situation here, but basically the gist of what happened was Great White was playing that night. The Station nightclub did not have a sprinkler system inside their club. They thought they were exempt. It turns out they weren't, but at that point they had no sprinklers. And the owners had put up a acoustic foam around the stage that was flammable. The producer for Great White, when he was setting up the stage that night, set up a pyrotechnic on stage that was an outdoor pyrotechnic. It was not approved for indoor use. Basically what ends up happening is it ignites that flammable foam on each side of the stage and starts a fire. The 4 red dots that you see on here are the entrances and exits for the Station nightclub, right? Everybody who came to the concert that night went in and out through this main entrance hall, entrance exit number 1, okay? So there was a reporter that was on scene that night. He was recording the concert and some of the stuff that was going on there for a piece they were going to do, and he captures this whole thing on video. And has anybody seen this before? No? All right. It's a really interesting video, and the things that I want you to pay attention to, you know, when it starts, the fire's already burning. The band hasn't even realized it yet, but it's already burning. But even after the band stops and the fire alarms start to go off, you see a lot of the denial that we talked about, right? People are visually seeing what's going on. There's a fire starting, but you don't see a ton of people that are in a hurry. There are still people standing by the stage and not really reacting to the bad things they're seeing. So it's kind of an interesting video. Sorry, guys. Trying to make it so everybody can hear it. Where's everybody going?
Nowhere.
But they are moving towards that one door, right? The only door that they've been in and out of in this club, which is the main entrance door. If you watch this entire video, it goes on for about 25 minutes, okay? And it's actually a really disturbing video. What this photographer actually gets out of the club shortly after this video stops playing here. He walks around to the back. When he gets to the back, it's already fully engulfed in the back of the building. And when he gets back to the front, to this main entrance door, it's about a minute and a half through this incident. And there's literally 7 deep of people on top of each other, laying on the ground, trying to get out of that main entrance door. Okay?
Excuse me.
Yes?
A similar event happened in the late 1940s at the Coconut Grove club in New England,
Okay.
where the most famous cowboy of that era, Buck Jones, was actually burning that fire. But the process was that the fire began. It was like, I think it was New Year's Eve.
Right?
And people were trying to exit through the door that came in, but they were all pushing out on the door that came in.
Right. Right, which is why they changed.
There were 240 people burning that fire.
Right.
Everybody who was there was dead.
Right, so that's where that change came in the way we build doors, right? All those doors are supposed to open out so that people can push out if there's some reason to do that. So I appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great point. You know, so we make these changes because we have this loss of life. Now, 100 people lost their lives in this fire, okay? It's a very tragic event. What this overview is an overview following the fire investigation. And each circle with a number in it represents the number of people who lost their lives in that area. As you can see, there was 31 still crammed into the entrance hall, another 18 who couldn't even make it in, and another 9 behind them. All in that same area because their body would not go somewhere their mind hadn't been before, right? They hadn't thought about where the exits were, they hadn't prepared themselves, so that's all they knew, was that that was the best way out. You know, look, we've got 3 people here right next to an emergency exit, just feet away. But because we didn't mentally prepare ourselves or have some idea of other alternatives to get out of a place, it really resulted in a really tragic incident. Now, there's a lot of other things that contributed to this as well, right? They said if they'd have had sprinklers, the people probably would have had time to all get out. There actually was criminal charges from this fire too. But it's a good point in making sure that you're at least paying attention to some of those emergency entrances and exits. So in that deliberation mode, I'm asking you to calm yourself. And if you're familiar with Lieutenant Colonel Grossman, who's written a few books on basically what he's done is some books that analyze our troops in combat and our law enforcement officers when they have to use a deadly force response during an incident. And one of the techniques that he puts out there is called combat breathing. You know, when I got put on the SWAT team, this was required reading for us because before we did a high-risk warrant entry, before we dealt with, went out on a react team, we all were practicing this combat breathing to bring ourselves down. I'm going to walk you guys through it so you can kind of experience that feeling. You can see how this works. So it's 4 counts of 4 seconds. So what I'm going to have you do when I tell you to begin is over the course of 4 seconds, I want you to inhale as much air through your nose as deeply as possible into your body. After that 4 seconds, we're going to hold that breath for 4 seconds. After that, we're going to exhale all the air out of our body through our mouth over 4 seconds. Then we're going to wait 4 seconds and start the process over again. So big deep breath in. Hold it 4 seconds. Exhale everything out. Wait 4 seconds. And start the process again. You can almost feel an instant calming effect when you exhale that really deep breath. That big deep breath forces us to take those big deep breaths, and it's very important. You can lower your heart rate 20 to 30 beats per minute if you practice this technique correctly, right? Job interviews. If your significant other jumps out and scares you, and out of the closet or something scares you to death. I tell this to coaches for their sports teams to have their kids do it before they go out there, right? Anytime you get that really anxious, nervous feeling, this is really, really helpful. And if you get in the habit of practicing it, it can be really effective. Another thing we talk about is shifting your emotion. You know, at the end of this towards the end of this presentation, we're going to talk about fighting for your life. And it's important that you take that, because we're all going to be scared, right? We find ourselves, up against somebody who has a firearm or is threatening to hurt us or take our lives. We're going to be scared. But what I need you to do is, you should be angry about that. These people have come into your space and they're trying to take everything that you've worked your entire life for from you. And shifting that emotion to not just be scared and feel sorry for yourself, but to be really angry about that can be really beneficial if we find ourselves fighting for our lives. And then, like we talked about as well, the mental scripting again is very important to make sure we're prepared. Prior military in the room.
Right here.
Okay, all right. Anybody remember the OODA loop from your military days? I'm not sure exactly when they started using this, but this was brought about by an Air Force colonel, and they were talking about fighter combat, like dog fighting and air combat. And one of the things that he brought up was the fact that we're all going through this OODA cycle, or this OODA loop, observation, orientation, then we make a decision, then we can jump into action. And what we're doing as human beings is we anticipate a lot of the person that we're going against reaction to this. So, for instance, if somebody walks into this room with a gun, the most likely reaction they're anticipating is to everybody to run, hide under the tables, cower in fear of them, right? What I'm asking you to do is think about this if you find yourself in a situation like an active shooter and throw a wrench into bad guys' OODA loop, right? If we do something that's unexpected, something that they're not anticipating, it throws them off and they have to reformulate the way they're going to carry out the rest of whatever they're doing. We're going to talk about some ways to do that, but it's very important to understand that we as human beings are experiencing this, and that if we throw that wrench into the OODA loop, it can be very effective. This is a video from a school board meeting down in Florida. The gentleman you see on the screen is the superintendent of the school board, and I stopped this video a couple times while we watch it because there's a lot of really good stuff in it. The first thing that you're going to see as we listen to this is he's going to be talking, and you're going to hear him be interrupted by a gentleman who says, "I have a motion." And then you hear a noise. That noise is this gentleman standing up in the meeting and spray painting a circle with a V through it on the wall. It's actually a symbol from a movie, V for Vendetta, if any of you have seen that. But he starts spray painting on the wall. Now remember we talked about which one of these things is not like the others, right? If you're in a room and somebody stands up and starts spray painting on the wall, right, and it's not like spray paint fun night or something, we should be paying attention to that, right? Those are automatically in our head. We should be saying, okay, this is not like the others. What are we going to do if bad things start to happen here? Man, struggles with the microphone, guys.
Notice this on the chart that you have there, and it's part of the plan that we had and the workshop we're going to have following this meeting. But this will be the first step in that whole process. I have a motion. Everybody in this room. Counter. At the rope.
So he pulls out a handgun, right? He pulls out a handgun and he tells all the women in the room that they can leave. This is really interesting because I want you to watch the reactions of the different people in the room and how they react to this, and see if you can tell me if there's a little bit of denial here, right? If we look right now, there's one lady who's been through some sort of class before, right? She's on the deck. She's crawling for the door, right? She apparently knows me somehow. But I want you to watch the reactions, the initial reactions of some of the other ladies in the room. Ladies, I love you to death. right? If a gentleman walks in here with a gun and tells you all to leave, don't stop and grab your bags, right? Don't grab your purse. It'll all be there when we're done, right? But this is precious time that we're wasting getting ourselves out of a really bad situation, right? This is denial at its, at its finest.
Hey, sir. John, just let him talk. He's talking. John.
That's the campus safety officer. He's a retired police officer who is not allowed to carry his firearm while he's on duty at the school. If you watch the entirety of this video, he goes back out to his vehicle, he retrieves his firearm, comes back, and ends this threat. Okay? But he's a trained person, a police officer, former police officer who's not allowed to carry it on duty. The next thing I want you to realize is that we have the bravest person in the room coming up from behind him here, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now, if that's my wife's purse, he's probably unconscious. But the thing you have to realize, folks, is that this is not the movies, right? In the movies, a lady comes out, whacks a guy with her purse, and down he goes, right? That's what happens in the movies. In real life, that's not the way it happens, right? People get shot with guns in real life and continue to fight, all right? You have to realize that. She's very brave, and if you're going to take that initiative to be that person who's going to fight for your life and the other lives of the people in that room, this is an all-out fight. This isn't a half-butt attempt that you just kind of give up on. If you're going to choose to do that, you need to fight and fight and fight until you have no fight anymore. So a lot of the question that I get with this video a lot of times is, what if I'm in this situation? When do I decide that I'm going to try to take it, to try to fight for myself? And there's a thing we talk about in law enforcement called distractionary windows, right? You want to find a time when that person's attention is kind of off of you so that you can take that split-second advantage to try to fight for your life. And what has she created here? A perfect distractionary window where all 6 grown men on the school board just sat there, right? Why is that? And I'm not busting their chops, right? That we just never had this conversation with people before, right? The best thing we've always known is kind of hang out and wait for the best, hope for the best to happen. You're going to see a little more denial here in just a second.
Yes.
If you have left the room safely, please, whoever you are, whatever your thought is, do not put yourself back in that situation, right? You safely made it. This is denial, folks. This is seeing bad things happen and thinking to myself, it's not actually what I'm seeing, right? That's denial. We need to break through that immediately and do other proactive things to help ourselves or others. So let's talk about active shooter events themselves. Active shooter event involves one or more persons engaged in killing or attempting to kill multiple people in an area occupied by multiple unrelated individuals. This is a mass homicide attempt. We're beyond negotiation at this point. We're beyond trying to reason with these people. They know the consequences of their actions. They're here to do one thing, and if we don't take that decisive action, we can really hurt a lot of people. This map is really interesting. This goes over active shooter events, and I don't have the specifics on each event, but what it does is it chronicles, the people of Alert have gone through and chronicled the active shooter events starting in the year 2000 and going through the year 2014. Now, I realize that data is a little bit old now, right? They haven't updated it for us, but the trend hasn't really changed. The interesting thing I find with this graphic is the frequency. So I graduated high school in 2003. And at that point, there wasn't a whole lot of social media available, right? If you wanted a Facebook account, you had to have a university email address. Like West Shore Community College didn't even cut it because I tried, right? You had to have Central Michigan, Michigan State, a university email to use it. Shortly after 2003, 2004, 2005, they lessened that and made it so everybody can do it. I just think it's really interesting to see the correlation, the increase of active shooter events, and as it correlates with the increase in the use of the internet and social media.
What do those dots mean?
So the small dots are 0 to 4 victims, the medium-sized dots are 5 to 9 victims, and the large dots are 10 plus victims of an active shooter incident.
It's going fast. It's accelerating.
So that's 179 incidents they identified. Every time I give this, everybody's like, I'm going to move out here somewhere, right? There's nothing out there, folks, all right? That's why there's nothing going on out there. But trust me, this hasn't changed. You know, we've all seen it on the news. It gets a lot of really good coverage, unfortunately, especially for the bad guys that do it. But I just think it's interesting to see that rise in the use of social media and the internet and how that kind of correlated with the increase in shooting. So how about the shooter? There really is no profile, right? The majority of the time they are male. There have been females who have partaken in this type of incident. Typically there's some sort of avenger mindset. The kids in Columbine talked about getting after the kids in white hats. The reason they brought that is because they had a policy where a lot of their student athletes would wear white hats to school. They felt slighted by that group. So that was their avenger mindset, right? They wanted to get back at these people that were, they felt were the cause of their issues. Typically, there's some sort of broadcast with the majority of active shooter incidents, right? There is something that triggers something to someone that would say, you know what, that's not like the others. This person has a really weird social media post. They have a really drastic change in behavior. They have something that typically tips off people that something is not right. And this is where the, if you see something, say something comes in, right? The majority of you have probably seen the news where in Brethren we had some things come out that led to an investigation by our office and an arrest for making terroristic threats. As if you saw me on the news the other night as well talking about this. So we're beyond the point of being able to joke about this, right? That's everybody's response. I was just joking around. There are no jokes as far as it goes, especially with school safety and talking about mass shootings. We're beyond the point of being able to joke about that. It's like yelling fire in the theater, right? You can't do that. There is no joke about that anymore. We don't take it like that, and it's no defense for that criminal act. So make sure we're paying attention to that. If you see something, you follow somebody on social media, you're at a place where somebody makes a comment, and you go, man, something is just not right with that. Something's a little off. There's a change in that behavior. Throw us a bone and just say, hey, you know, I saw this. It could be nothing. It could be something. But at least put the ball in our court so that we can do what we have to do to try to investigate that and try to prevent something like this from ever happening. So where do they happen? Commerce, about 45% of the time. Education, a little over 20%. Under 10% outdoors. And the other includes things like church shootings. Texas and the church shooting in Texas made a huge headline in 2017. But it wasn't the only reason, but part of the reason that 2017 was the deadliest year for church-place violence in the United States of America. These things are happening in our churches, they're happening in our schools, and there's a couple reasons for that we'll talk about here in just a minute. But be vigilant of that. This is where they're happening. So shooter connection. 55% of these people who perpetrate these acts have some sort of intimate connection with the place that they perpetrate the act, right? Student or former student, spouse or former spouse is there. Some sort of intimate connection. But the other 45% have no connection at all, right? They don't have any ties to that area. There's just two reasons that they're going there. And it's really the things that dictate the number of deaths that we're going to experience if we find ourselves in a situation like this. The first thing that determines that number is how quickly law enforcement arrives, right? The quicker we can get there to take care of the threat, we can put a good guy in there with a gun to take care of this issue. The quicker we can end that threat to your safety. The other thing that's going to determine the number of deaths we experience in an active shooter incident is target availability. That's why you see these people doing it at schools, right? A lot of times that's student related, but big venues like the Las Vegas concert venue, the Rihanna concert where they blew up, they're looking for people who are all bunched together so that they have a high probability of success. This is the important thing, right? If I can get you guys doing proactive things in the time between when this thing jumps off and when law enforcement arrives, we can reduce the number of available targets for bad guy and hopefully have a positive impact on the situation. Here's a figure for you. 3 minutes. Anybody know what 3 minutes is? What's that? 180 seconds. Fantastic. We've got 3 minutes is the national average response time for law enforcement to an active shooter incident. Now I'm going to throw something at you there, because in the city of Manistee here, 3 minutes is probably a pretty accurate figure, right? You've got our local police department that's always around the area. If you're at MHS, if they call out a shooting there, you're getting all my staff, all my administrative staff, the sheriff will be there, the undersheriff, I will be there. We're getting a lot of people in that 3 minutes. If you're in Coatmish and this thing jumps off and my guys are all down by the office, it's probably going to be a little longer than 3 minutes, right? It takes us a while to get way out county. So that's why this is so important, right? We can't rely on 3 minutes. That's our best case scenario. But I need you doing something in that time between when it jumps off and when we get there to help yourself and others. And that's where your response and your civilian response comes in. So the first thing we need to get through is denial. we need to dismiss denial right off the get. What's the first thing you heard everybody interviewed after the Las Vegas shooting say? We're watching the concert and then we thought we heard firecrackers, right? Fireworks. We thought it was fireworks. We're in Las Vegas, we're at a concert, we're having a good time. It can't be bad things happening, right? That's denial. If you hear something that could be gunshots but you're not sure, what is the harm in at least acknowledging that and taking some early proactive measures to address it? Just like I tell our school, if somebody dumps a firecracker in the trash can, we should be locking down, not going, it didn't sound like a gunshot. Is it? We're wasting valuable time, and that's denial, right? It doesn't hurt to get us on the way. We can always cancel if it turns out to not be something bad. But work through that denial phase, go right to that deliberation mode so that we can start doing proactive things to help ourselves. This is Christina Anderson. She was in room 211 when the Virginia Tech shooting started, right? She got a very powerful story, and she kind of walks you through her experience and how she felt that day and the reason, what she did, which was basically to play dead, because that's all she really knew.
So this is pretty important. This day, I ended up sitting in exactly the same seat I always did, in the back right-hand corner on the right side of the class. What we don't know is at this time, someone is downstairs and he's chaining all 3 doors shut. There's supposed to be desks there. Oh, you guys can see. We heard the first gunshots outside in the hallway, and my teacher, she opened the door. She immediately slammed it and she said, "Call 911." And the second that door closed, he walks in. He walks in shooting. There's absolutely no time. He goes to the other side of the classroom by the windows. He's holding 2 guns. He doesn't say anything. He just starts going down the rows of people. It's very quick. It's very loud. It's very scary. We had these very shitty desks. I get on the floor. I put my knees under the chair, my stomach on the seat, hands overhead, eyes are closed. As the shots keep going, and it's, like I said, very loud, I can tell it's getting closer and closer. And I'm telling myself, brace yourself, your turn is going to come. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't think I was going to get shot, but I knew that something really serious was going on. And I knew for whatever reason that I should just play dead. He shoots me. The first time's in the back. And you'd be surprised, getting shot doesn't hurt that much because shock overtakes you, but it starts to burn and really kind of seep in, and that's when it gets really uncomfortable. It's not pleasant. He leaves the first time, he goes across the hall, and while he's gone, cell phones are ringing, people are coughing, and the smell of gunpowder has completely filled the room. Gunpowder is this really sticky, pungent, warm smell, and it just makes you very, very thirsty. He comes back. Now, this time, the shooting is more intermittent. It's slower because he's looking to see who's alive. I remember telling myself to stop breathing because I can feel my stomach hitting that chair, and I'm saying, stop, he can see that you're alive. The third and final time, he killed himself in front of our classroom. When the police broke in, the first thing the guy said was, "We have a lot of blacks in here." I didn't know what that meant, but when police sweep a crime scene, they have 30 seconds. If you're red, you're critically injured. If you're yellow, you'll live. Black means you're dead. In 9 minutes, he killed 11 of my classmates and my teacher. 32 people lost their lives that day.
This is what we've always told people, right? This is all we've ever really known to do. To hide and hope. Get under your desk, get under your chairs, get under your tables, do whatever you can to get out of sight. It's not effective, and it doesn't help us, especially now with how these people are dealing with these things. They're not specific targets. They're looking for people who are available to make victims, and we need to move past that. Get right into that deliberation mode. And this is what I want you to think about if you find yourself in a situation like an active shooter. ADD, avoid, deny, defend. And it goes kind of in that order, right? But you have the ability to jump up and down depending on where you're at in relationship to the bad things that are going on. So we're going to talk about these three things you can do. The first is avoid. Leave as soon as possible. The important thing to know about this is knowing your exits, right? We have to know how to get out of somewhere if bad things are happening inside. And then as soon as you're in a safe area, far away from whatever's going on, I need you to call 911 because I need you to start my clock, right? The faster you make that phone call and get my guys on the way, the faster we can put an end to this thing. An important thing to know is that we have secondary exits, right? So if you have one entry and exit to your room, a door, and bad things are happening in that hallway, we can always break out a window, open a window, do something to get out a secondary exit. But you have to think about how you would react in those situations, and that's why this is great to push out to our schools, right? Teachers think about getting out of the doorway, but do they have the ability, have they thought about what they do to break a window out to get our kids out the window if they need to do that? The second phase is deny. This is what we're doing with our kids in our lockdowns, right? It can be very effective as long as it's done quick. Lock the door, turn the lights out, get out of sight, right? I'm going to have you hide against the door, or against the wall with the door, in the deep pocket of the room so that the people looking in the door can't see you. But I want you close enough to that door where if your lock, your deny fails, that you can try to spring into action to help defend yourself. So, if the door opens in toward you, there's a couple things you can do, and this is what we're telling our teachers, right? It's not just lockdown anymore. When you lock down, if you hear bad things happening in the hallway, we should start barricading that door if it works in towards us, right? The more the better, the heavier the better, and if you have a door stop, a door wedge can be a simple, cheap way to make a very effective locking mechanism for your door. We need to start doing that, right? If for some reason our light lock fails, our locking mechanism fails, it makes it a lot harder to get at us if we have stuff stacked in front of that door that they have to move. How about if your door opens outward? There's a couple things we can do. You can see the officer here demonstrating what we call a tactical cinch. The majority of doors that open outward will have a big industrial hinge, especially in schools and things like that. If you wrap a belt around that hinge, or a rope or something around that hinge, it makes it very difficult to open that door. But we're not just stopping at hoping the door is locked, right? We're taking additional proactive measures to make it harder for people to get in. If you can't avoid this threat to your safety and you can't deny them access to your location, we need to have a conversation about defending yourself, right? This is something that we've never really had a conversation about with civilians before, right? We need to throw that wrench into the bad guy's OODA loop. We need to do something that's unexpected. They're not going to expect you to do this, right? They're expecting you to hide under the table and hope for the best. We need to think about what we have accessible to us. You know, I always ask my teachers, how many of you keep a weapon in your classroom? And nobody raises their hand, right? A fire extinguisher is I see a couple here. Extremely effective weapon. If anybody's had a fire extinguisher put off in their face, it's devastating and very disorienting. And then you can kabong them on the head with it right after you do that. There are additional options, coffee pots, anything that you have accessible to you that you can improvise into making a weapon. This person's trying to take your life, right? You have the legal right to defend yourself. And we need to start doing that and banding together. You know, if all of us in this room stood up to bad guy just like the good people on Flight 93 did, and just like people do on airplanes now when they try to hijack them. If we all stand up together and united fight for our lives, we can be a lot more effective in taking down this threat. So some of the thoughts, if you're locked down and you're hoping for the best, but you want to be prepared to defend yourself, is positioning. Against that wall with the door, right? But close enough to the door where you can react. Typically, people who have no tactical training, the first thing to the door is going to be their firearm, right? If we can pin that firearm and point it away from the rest of the people in the room, as long as it's not pointed at us, it may go off. It may be loud and scary, but it's not going to hurt anybody, right? As long as it's not pointed at anybody. Grab the gun, and then I want you to fight. And this isn't lightly whack a guy with your purse and hope for the best. This is dirty, right? We're not getting a scorecard at the end of this, right? There's no judges to see how we do. What you need to do is fight dirty. Eyes, throat, groin, vulnerable areas on human beings that we can take advantage of. And it's not like the movies. If you hit a guy in a certain spot, he goes down and doesn't move again, right? They're going to be able to fight through that. So keep striking those areas until that threat to your safety is no longer a threat. This is a video on active counter training. I don't teach this class, but it's a really good representation of how some of these tactics can be effective.
So just practice with me one time the drill. Here, no, come here. One, and a U, right there. Good, good. What will help you a lot is actually push the knee here. Yeah, because that will collapse a lot easier than my entire body, especially if I'm strong. So just aim for the knee. You see that? That's what it's try one time. The knee. Yeah. Oh yeah. Much better. Nice job. Nice job. Shots fired in the corridor. Shots
Keep in mind, two females against a male assailant in this scenario.
Whoa.
Yes, sir. Right on. So, okay. So, shots fire. You good, Steve? All right. So, what did you shoot at? What did you shoot unless you see a person.
Well, it was dark, so.
All right. Now, did you notice that?
Yes.
Did that throw you off any?
For sure, because I had to look around.
Right.
That took away a potential target area.
Right there.
So my first response was to look for a target other than this.
Other than this. It took you, what, a second and a half?
For sure, it played into Yoda.
Of course.
So it delayed me a second or two to look for another target. Maximum one shot, and I don't even know if it was a person.
So we now cut down 2, maybe 3 shots from before with the handgun, with broad daylight, with one side surprise, to maximum 1 shot without knowing if it's even a target. That's a big improvement, right, people? Okay, one more time. Let's fire. Show us fire. All right.
So you can see how some of these little things, like just shutting the lights off as they come into that room, throws that little wrench into that OODA loop, right? It gives that second where they have to adjust to the light. They have to try to find the people they're looking for, and it gives us an opportunity to take advantage of that, right? Jump on that person, fight for our lives. That's the things that we have to be thinking about. So at the beginning of this, we asked if this stuff works. And this is kind of a breakdown of Virginia Tech, room by room, and it kind of talks about the things that they did and how they impacted the amount of people that were shot and killed in that room. So the red bars represent the number, or the percentage of people in that room that were killed. The yellow bar represents the percentage of people in that room that were shot. So room 206 had no action taken. They weren't able to keep the guy out at all. 77% of the people in that room lost their lives. 92% were shot. Room 211 was Christina Anderson's room. They had a failed denial. They tried to slam the door in the guy's face, keep him out. That was unsuccessful. 67% of the people in that room lost their lives. 100% of the people in that room were shot. Room 207 had a late denial. He came in, did some shooting, he left. They were able to somewhat barricade the door to keep him out. He actually pushed it open about an inch and discharged 1 round through that opening. Didn't hit anybody else. 38% of the people in that room lost their lives. 85% were shot. Room 204 is the really interesting study. The professor in room 204 was a Holocaust survivor. Immediately when the shot started, he knew exactly what that sound was, and he started telling his kids to jump out the second-story window, and they did, right? He moved immediately through denial to deliberation and found the best avenue for his kids to do their best to survive, and they started jumping out the second-story window. He saved a lot of lives that day. He actually lost his life. He was trying to hold the door with his body. Bad guy shoots through it and ends up taking his life. But only 14% of the people in that room were killed. 36% of the people in that room were shot. 205 was a full denial. Kids on the floor, feet up against the door, keeping bad guy out. He wasn't able to get in that room at all. Nobody in that room was shot. Nobody in that room was killed. The important thing to remember is that you're not helpless. You're going to feel that way initially, and you're going to want to curl up into that ball and kind of freeze, but you're not helpless. The things that you do in that time between when this thing jumps off and when law enforcement gets there to take care of this problem matter, right? We need you to be reducing the number of targets they have and be doing proactive things until we can get our guys there to take care of this. So how about calling 911? Everybody should be empowered to call 911. I volunteer at the Armory Youth Center occasionally, and I remember going through my initial training, and we were told that the only person allowed to call 911 is the supervisor that night. I talked to Robert, and I said, I'm not comfortable with that, right? We have to be able to start that clock as soon as possible. Trying to find that one designated person is not the answer. So our schools, everybody is empowered to call 911. What do you do when you call there? I want you to be clear, I want you to be concise and repeat the information as many times as you need to get it through. The thing you have to remember is when you pick up that phone and dial 911, a human being answers the other side, right? So although we've got a lot of stress inoculation because we've been through a lot of stressful incidents, we still have that same physiological and psychological response that people going through the event have. When I was on the road and they called my badge number for a complaint, I knew immediately whether or not it was a hot call. Because the inflection in the dispatcher's voice changes, right? If we got a serious accident, if we've got a violent situation going on, if we got somebody who's having cardiac arrest, they sound different on the radio because they're human beings too. So be clear, be concise, be patient with them and repeat it multiple times if you have to. You heard this in Patty Nielsen's 911 call, right? She said, oh, he's outside this hall. That created confusion. Is he outside the hall or is he outside? So they had to take some time to clarify that. If you have a CPL holder in your area, please give a clear description of where they're at and what they're wearing, right? And if you have a CPL and you have your gun on you, try not to have that firearm in your possession when law enforcement shows up. And we'll talk a little bit about CPLs toward the end of this. But it's very, we'll talk about it, but it's very easy to make yourself a victim, so you have to be very well versed in how you're going to handle that situation. Stay on the phone and continue to give information if it's safe. If you believe talking will compromise your safety and you can't talk, I would ask you to leave the phone connected, right? So my dispatcher can still hear what's going on when that phone is set down. But if you can't communicate it safely, please do that. Being a good witness. If you catch a glimpse at bad guy, what things do we want to know as law enforcement? Anybody?
What he's wearing.
What is he wearing? Height, weight.
Right.
Long gun or handgun is very important for us too, right? That changes our engagement distance a lot.
Right.
What race he is, perhaps, black, white, Hispanic.
That's all good stuff for us to know. Where he's at in the building, right? North side, south side, east side, west side. Because I might not know where room 201 is in the building that you're in. But if we can at least get an idea of where he's at, my officers have a place to arrive safely and get in there and do that. The thing I like to mention with this, though, never put yourself at risk to get this information, right? If you can safely get away, you can safely lock down. Don't try to steal a peek at bad guy to help us out. Get yourself to safety. Get secured yourself. But if you do happen to get a look at him, all that stuff is good for us to know. This is our priority work as law enforcement when we get there. The first thing we're going to do is stop the killing. We're stepping over victims. We're running past locked doors. We're going right to the sounds of screams and gunfire, and we're going to deal with the threat immediately. As soon as that's done, we're going to stop the dying, right? A lot of it has to do with medical, and we'll talk about that in a couple slides here. And then after that, we're going to go to evacuating the area. If you are safely locked down or in a safe area, be prepared to be there for a while, right? This is going to take us a while to get these first two things done and then get to you to evacuate you. So be patient with us. When police arrive, please follow all commands. In the academy, we teach cops to wash hands. Hands are going to kill us on the road, right? So we always want to make sure that our hands are clear. My guys are human beings too. This is a split-second decision for a police officer when they come around the corner during a shooting, right? And it can be very difficult in that heat of the moment. We're going through the same physiological and psychological effects you are, right? Because we're human beings. This is a split-second decision. Have your hands clear, palms up. Oh, I'll drop my phone on the ground. Hands up so that everybody can see that you are not a threat to us. And don't move unless we tell you to. We may have situational awareness where we want you to stay locked down. And what people have a tendency to do, when law enforcement comes to the door, they rush us. Hey, it's the cops, I'll hide behind them, right? That's not a great idea, because we have that priority work we have to take care of. And you might be at the evacuation stage because we're working our way towards bad guys. So don't rush us, stay where you're at unless we tell you to move. Medical. You have to understand there will be an EMS delay. I encourage everybody who sees this presentation to at least be familiar with basic hemorrhage control. If you're in a room and you lock down and that person that you bring into your room had been shot in the arm, that might not be bleeding a whole lot, right, to start out with, because what? Their heart rate's elevated, all their blood's in their internal organs. As they start to come down a little bit, that injury can be much more severe as the blood starts to return to it, right? So, my wife thinks I'm crazy because I carry cat tourniquets in both of our vehicles. You might not have to go that far, but at least having some basic knowledge on how to control bleeding is something that I really advocate. It has a CTEC website on here. If you just go to YouTube, they have great videos and they'll show you how to use tourniquets or turn different clothing items into tourniquets or ways to stop and control bleeding. I always encourage people to do that. So, in summary, ADD, remember that acronym, avoid, deny, defend. If you can get away and you can get away safely, get as far away as you can, call 911 and start my clock. Get law enforcement on the way to deal with this thing. If you can't avoid, I want you to deny. Lock yourself down, stack stuff in front of the door, whatever you have to do to keep bad things from getting to you. And if you can't avoid and you can't deny, we have to have a personal conversation with ourselves about whether or not we can defend ourselves. I had a lady in a presentation say, I couldn't do it. I couldn't fight. And I said, okay, do you have kids? Well, yeah, if my kids are with me, I could. Well, how does that make any difference, right? They're still going to lose their parent whether they're with you or not. You should be fighting for yourself and everything that you worked your entire life for. And that's something that we really need to start thinking about. I do have about a 15-minute video. I will apologize. It's been described as kind of corny. But it summarizes everything that we've kind of talked about and kind of puts it all together. And they want us to show it. So I have to do that for my certification.
inside the store. We need help now.
What's going to be the solution by the time we...
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Actually, think he's got an old... He's got a truck. I don't know if your daughter will be interested.
There's a gunman inside the store. He's shooting the place up. We need help now.
Issues that we found. Okay, Emily, see what that is. See what's going on. Just let us know.
There's a man with a gun. He's right there.
There you go. You're safe for that. This guy with the gun is shooting. Look. Thanks. No, look. Run. To the right. To the loading dock. Come on, this way. Oh, no, come here. Yeah, in here. The gunman's coming. What are we gonna do? We're gonna have to defend ourselves.
I can't do this.
You're gonna see your daughter tonight, okay? We are all going to go home tonight. All right? We have a right to defend ourselves. Get the gun! Hey! Hold him down!
Gosh, I'm just so glad you're okay.
Yes, we're all good. Everybody's going home. Yeah.
If you ever have the misfortune to be in an active shooter event, you deserve to survive. Symptoms taken during these events are critical to their survival. We have identified 3 options that have proven effective in many events. These are: avoid the attacker, deny the attacker access to your area, defend yourself. It is a personal decision, but you have a right to do so. Avoiding the attacker starts with being aware of your surroundings at all times and knowing what is going on around you. If you see or hear something that looks suspicious, take action. For example, the stalker took immediate and effective action to protect himself when he observed the shooter pulling out weapons from the bag. Others, however, hesitated, and this hesitation can cost them valuable time that they could use to get away from the threat. If you hear something that is, or could be, gunfire, start trying to get away from it as soon as possible. Gunfire has a distinctive sound. Inside of buildings, the sound can be muffled or distorted. A single loud bang could be a person dropping something, or even thunder. But repeated loud bangs are much more likely to be gunfire. Additionally, look at the reaction of others. Are they startled or scared? Are they running? What are they saying? Any one of these events individually may create denial, but when put together, should create a heightened awareness and stimulate an immediate response. It is important that you know how to get out. The situation will be chaotic and rapidly changing. In general, you will want to go to the nearest exit. But you must also understand that the closest exit may not be accessible or safe to use. If this is the case, go to a different exit. While avoiding the threat, consider the uses of cover and concealment. Cover offers protection from gunfire, while concealment minimizes your exposure to the attacker. Try to keep objects between you and the attacker. If you can't avoid the attacker, sometimes the best option will be to deny the attacker access to your location. In many locations, this can be accomplished by closing and locking a door, such as they did in the meeting room. Locking the door has proven effective in many attacks. If the door does not have a lock, you can place heavy objects in front of it. Remember, barricades work best if the door opens toward you. If it doesn't, use things that are readily available, such as straps, belts, or objects that can be used to block or secure the door to make it difficult for the attacker to enter the room. This may at least slow the attacker down and give you time to identify alternate means of escape, such as adjoining rooms or windows. When attempting to deny access to your location, you want to make it appear that there is no one in your area. Lock doors, turn off the lights, silence your phones, and get out of sight. Your attempt to deny the attacker access to your location might fail.
The government's coming. What are we going to do? We're going to have to defend ourselves.
Have a backup plan about what you will do. In many cases, this may be to defend yourself. You need to be in a place where you can act if the attacker comes into your location. In most rooms, you will line up against the same wall that the door is on. Near the door so you can react, but not directly in front of it. If you are unable to avoid or deny, your best option may be to defend yourself by using whatever is available. In a situation where someone is attempting to kill you, you have the legal right to defend yourself. Attack weak spots such as eyes, throat, and groin. Fight to the best of your ability and do not quit until the attacker is stopped. This is what the workers in the warehouse did when they were unable to avoid the attacker and felt their lives were in immediate danger. Whatever option you choose, call 911 as soon as you are in a safe location. Provide any information that you know. The operator will ask you a lot of questions. If you don't know the answer, don't guess. Just say you don't know and only state the facts.
I'm not sure. There's 3 of us in the room. We're on this.
This will be a complex situation, and we can't tell you what you should do in every case. What we can do is provide you with information about the options that we have found to be most effective for surviving these attacks. The ultimate choice is yours. What you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Law enforcement will be entering a chaotic scene with limited information. Their first priority will be to stop the threat to your safety. police may not know where or who the threat is. Listen and comply with their commands immediately.
Put it down, sir. Put it down. Both of you on the ground.
Police are trained to look at people's hands to assess threats. Do not have anything in your hands that could be perceived as a weapon, such as a cell phone.
Show me your hands, sir. Show me your hands. Move to us. Everybody, keep your hands up, please. Walk out the door.
If told to do so, stay where you are and do not make sudden movements. Again, follow all commands. Remember, what you do matters. Avoid the attacker. Deny access to your location. Defend yourself. Remember, ADD. You can survive.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I always have a question. I see you're talking about lockdown, and I see these things on TV where everybody's running out of the school. Isn't that just a better target?
So it all depends
And
on
then how do you lock? You know, I've talked to the chief of police, and he said that we have things to put on the door that locks it. What is that about?
So the night lock system is something that was put in, well, it was before the election of last year, so over a year now we've had them. And basically what it is there's a bracket on the door on the inside, and then there's a hole in the concrete floor on the ground. So basically what it is teacher grabs that bracket off the inside of the door, slides it into place, and that door is locked. Okay, so they don't have to worry about fumbling with keys or magnets or any other system. They drop that night lock system in the bracket, and the door is locked.
Now you say the teacher, can a student do it too?
Student can do it too, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a very easy system to use. As to your question about, kids running out, right now, the way it's set up, bricks and mortar is probably the best bet for our kids if we can safely lock down. But if our kids find themselves in the middle of a hallway and there's shooting going on, maybe the best bet for them is that exit door that's right next to them, rather than trying to find a classroom that hasn't been locked down yet. The great thing about this program is that it allows you the ability of 3 options, and I can't tell you the best scenario or the best reaction to every single scenario. It's really up to you guys to assess what's going on at that moment, where you're at, and what's available to you to make that correct decision or make the best decision for you. For right now, we are advocating that our kids lock down in our schools. They're behind bricks and mortar. It eliminates the potential for an outside person waiting for them to flee the school. So if we can safely lock down, we want them locked down, and increasing barricades in the hall if they're hearing bad things outside, things like that.
Well, it seems to me like the reason they are doing this is just for the attention, because it's what sells newspapers. It's headlines, everything bad, tragic. You never see any good news in headlines. And it seems to me also that when someone tries to counter them, a lot of them try to outwit what's being countered. So you always got to keep coming up with new strategies continuously. And how many people in America can actually name 5 serial killers, but how many can name 5 of their victims?
Right. Nope, I couldn't agree with you more. This will be a constantly evolving threat. I don't think anybody claims to know the cause of it 100%. That a lot of people have theories and thoughts. But I think the most important thing and the way that we're trying to address this now is by bringing this up to people like this group here, or any local groups in town that want to have this conversation, so that we at least give people a proactive way to deal with this situation if they find it. Like I talked about with 9/11, if we can change the way we as people view these events, and instead of cowering and sitting and hoping for the best, we take those proactive measures, I think we can greatly reduce the effectiveness of the bad guys' efforts. So, Dave, you had a question?
Two things.
Yep.
Would you address the alert program at Texas State University a little bit? Mm-hmm. And how many of our law enforcement people in our area, our fire people, our EMS people, have been involved in this training, and how did that training get into our area? And then secondly, are any kind of scenario-based trainings planned for our schools?
Okay, yeah, I'll try. If I forget something, remind me. So I'll start with our local law enforcement. Just like everyone in the country, our local law enforcement here in Manistee County started making changes to the way we address active shooter threats immediately following Columbine. At that point, they came out with what they called the quad system, which was basically you got 4 officers together and systematically went through the school and addressed the threat. The new school of thought, and we just went, it wasn't an alert training, but it was called LASER from LSU, which is basically, if you are the first person there, we no longer, as I stated in the presentation, can afford to wait for additional backup units, especially if I'm out counting. You know, if I got a guy that can get to brother in school in 2 minutes, but then he's got to wait 10 minutes for me to come from my office, that doesn't help us any, right? So we are now trained, each officer has the equipment, heavy armor, ballistic vest, and patrol rifles. We all carry in every patrol car to go in and deal with this threat as a single law enforcement officer. We're not waiting at the door for additional backup. That's something that we've been refining in the years since Columbine High School. And the last training we had on it was like a year ago where we sat and did that. So as far as scenarios for our schools, I have not, all the schools in our area have been through the training program that you just sat through. The initial goal for me as the emergency manager, just because of the scope of the number of people, was to at least get it to the staff and faculty so that we had some shepherds inside the school that could start doing these proactive things. Now, I have been approached, and I've had several people bring their kids to the presentation. Schools are kind of tossing it around right now whether or not they're going to bring this in for available for students. You know, I recommended like 7th grade and above initially for the presentation. So that as far as a physical actual drill, I have not had a request for that yet. It's something that I entertained and would be willing to, you know, to help facilitate for them if it was something that they wanted. I do have an active shooter drill set for the county building and the courthouse in October. Something the county's been wanting for a long time, so all of our county employees have been through this. We're going to do an active shooter scenario, which basically will be a similar response to our schools for at least our local law enforcement, EMS, and fire services. They will all be involved in that full-scale exercise. So we will simulate police, fire, and EMS response to an active shooter incident at the courthouse, which would be very similar to what we would encounter at the school. There's another part of your question I think I missed.
There was one that I didn't ask. At one point in your presentation, you said if somebody's calling your department or 911, they should say he's in the south part of the school or the east part of the school, because not 201. We don't know where room 201 is.
Right.
Is that the truth, or do you guys have a floor plan of every school, or don't you?
So, yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, because you know, for a lot of buildings we don't have that floor plan. Since Parkland in Florida, we have now established a book in our central dispatch that has a laminated floor plan of each school in Manistee County. Something one of our dispatchers brought up. I thought it was a fantastic idea, so that's something we've done. So now, if we get a report of an incident in a school, and that teacher says, I know I'm room 201, I can hear him right outside my room. Our dispatcher can flip open that book to whatever school that is, and they can look at that overlay and say, okay, 201 is in the northwest corner of the building, you know, just so our officers have a way to respond to that. So we are doing proactive things to increase our effectiveness of our response to our schools. Now, am I going to be able to have a layout for every single building in the county? Probably not feasible for that, but at least for our schools, where the majority of this stuff we're seeing happen lately is going on, we do have a flip book of laminated overlays for all of our schools in Manistee County.
Not to hog this.
What's that?
That's highly commendable.
Yeah, well, we're doing our best. Just like everybody in law. I mean, nobody wants this to happen in their jurisdiction, and we surely don't want to be unprepared if it does come calling. So,
if a superintendent of any of our schools were to ask your office or you, whoever, to work up some scenario-based training to have a bad guy dressed in orange or something again on a particular date, let's run through how we would handle this. He could perhaps break into various rooms and practice just like your video showed. Would that be a possibility?
So I would definitely think, at least for the staff, if only the staff, that would be a good idea. I have some administrators who aren't really keen on the idea of showing the presentation to students, let alone having them participate in drills, because a lot of the kids, you know, just like everything, there will be parents who will not want their kids to see this or participate in a drill like that. If there were a school superintendent or somebody who wanted to run through some scenarios, I'd be more than happy to do that. You know, one of the things that was mentioned when I did maps was having a blank gun and at least being able to hear throughout the building what that gunshot might sound like. And you'd be very surprised, in a classroom with a closed door, a gunshot is very quiet. A lot more quiet than you'd probably think it would be in a building like that. So, you know, that's something that I offer to them too. I'd be more than happy to facilitate and set up. I don't think we're to the point where they would allow us to have students participate, but just like we're going to do at the courthouse, we're going to invite all of our faculty or our employees to come from the county, participate in that drill, be in their space where they're working when this happens, so that they can address it. So I'd be more than happy to entertain anything that any school wanted to do. That's part of my job. Yes, sir.
Well, we hear a lot of debate about arming the teachers.
Yep.
I guess my thought is that in bigger schools and in different states, they do have someone armed, as
Right.
we've just seen in the last couple of days.
Right.
That was able to put somebody down.
Right.
But how about the stun gun and maybe a 9-iron?
So
in the corner for the backup.
So as I stated in the presentation, I have discussed with all of our teachers and faculty at our different schools their weapon possibilities. You know, the wasp spray went around for a while, the 25-foot. You know, as far as the taser goes, you know, the taser is not 100% effective. I've used it several times in the course of my job where you use it and it's ineffective and the fight continues. So, you know, it'd be like asking, you know, do you feel comfortable with me handing you a taser and asking you to step in front of a bad guy with a gun and use that and hope it works? I don't think we can ask our teachers to do that. Is it an option you could look at? I don't, you know, anything could benefit in the right situation.
Well, even the teacher, even if the teachers didn't want it, maybe the janitor or somebody, I'm looking at maybe the smaller school.
Right. You know, I don't think anybody's pulled anything off the table as far as that goes, but, you know, a taser, my maximum distance with my taser is 25 feet. So, you know, especially if you've been into any of our schools, there are a lot of long hallways. So trying to get that taser, having it in the right spot within 25 feet of bad guy, I just don't think is a very realistic option for countering that threat. I would much rather have that janitor be shoveling kids into a locker room or shoveling them out the door, doing proactive measures, rather than trying to use a taser. Now, I will address the issue of guns in school, right? Because that's the big hot button issue right now. I will start off my discussion on CPLs by saying I'm a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. I carry a gun every single day. I'm comfortable with it. I feel naked without it. And I'm a strong supporter of concealed pistol licenses, being able to conceal carry. Okay, that's how I start my speech. But there are a couple things that you need to keep in mind. Do we have concealed pistol holders or concealed pistol license holders? I got some in the crowd here. Fantastic. Thank you. But a couple of things I want you to remember. How often are you shooting? When I was on the SWAT team, I shot a lot, and I was a really good shot because I shot a lot, right? But it's a perishable skill. Many people get their CPL, they go to the range on that range day for their CPL, and they never look at their gun again other than when they're carrying it, right? They don't go out and shoot it, right? I enjoy shooting. It's a lot of fun. If you're going to carry that gun, you have a commitment not only to yourself, but the people who are around you while you're carrying it to make sure you're proficient with it. There are some other things. If you're going to arm teachers, how do they carry that pistol? Are they proficient with drawing it? And not just drawing it, but reholstering it after that's done. You know, a lot of people carry a cloth in the waistband holster. Well, that's great to get it out and conceal it, right? But if you try to reholster it and your belt's tight, it can be really difficult. So that's a skill we have to talk to those people that might be carrying guns about. How often are they shooting? You know, weapon retention, and if you lose that firearm, or how you're carrying it during the course. These are all things that would have to be tackled by that administration in that school and how they would deal with that. The other thing I talk about with CPLs goes along with how often you shoot is a statistic that comes from the law enforcement side of it. So a law enforcement officer, we have to qualify twice a year. You know, we are comfortable with carrying firearms. We do it every day for work. I do it every day whether I'm at work or not. So we're comfortable with guns. Does anybody know the law enforcement national average hit percentage in a gunfight?
Pretty low.
2%.
20%. So every 10 rounds, we, on average, now this is nationwide, so there are much better and there are no hits at all. But the nationwide average is 20%. So this is what I'm asking you. If the teacher's going to step out into the hallway and shoot 10 times that bad guy and he hits him twice, that's great. Where are our other 8 rounds go? If they're going into our other kids, that is not an effective solution. In this program, with this program, the the purpose or the place where concealed pistol license holders fall in is no different. If you can get out and get away, I want you to get away. If you can deny access to your location, I want you to do that. And if you need to defend your life or the lives of other people around you, and you have your concealed pistol, you use that for what it was intended, which was defending your life or the lives of other people around you, right? That's where you fall into this program, as far as alert in Texas State University when they put it together. It's hard because a lot of times there's a lot of really, there's a lot of emotions that comes with having that somewhat political conversation about guns in classrooms and concealed pistol licenses. There's some people that are at the far end of the spectrum as they like guns, and there's some people at the far end of the spectrum where they don't care for guns. I don't know that I can change your mind. You know, if you don't have experience with guns, I know I've talked with Dave, and you know he belongs to the Muzzleloaders Club, and he talked about those people that might not have ever had a positive experience with a gun. That's something that they're willing to entertain at the Muzzleloaders Club to just show you what that's all about. So if you have questions like that, get in touch with somebody from the community who's big in a group where they do shooting, and get involved with that to be familiar with it. As we just saw in the most recent school shooting, the most effective tool against somebody with a gun is somebody with a firearm to come in and take care of that threat. But if you are that person who has that gun, you have a responsibility to yourself and the people around you. And if you have it in our schools, you have a really strong responsibility to our kids to make sure that you shoot it often, you're proficient with it, you know how to carry it, how to keep it from getting taken from you, and all of those items that I've kind of discussed previously before we start just throwing them just to the random person in our schools. Yeah.
I was at a discussion kind of the other day, and the guy was just totally appalled by that people could have concealed carry in churches, and he was thinking that we should make a law that they can't.
So part of that is true, because you have to have the permission of the lead officiant at a church in order to conceal carry there, okay? But I can tell you that in the course of giving this presentation and having discussions with a lot of church leaders, a lot of them are now designated. They have security teams, right? They have designated people who they allow to carry firearms in their church. There's a lot of other proactive measures if your parish is not comfortable with that, and I'd be happy to have that conversation with them too. A lot of things we're doing in school, single point entry. I advocate ushers being very vigilant. Typically our ushers at our church are people who are there the majority of our masses, right? They're very familiar with the people in our parish, so addressing that potential threat as it comes to the door, it's just like bank tellers. They tell bank tellers to make eye contact and greet people at the door, because people who are there to rob you have a lot harder time doing that after you've made eye contact and said, hey, good morning, nice to see you, what can we help you with? They have a harder time robbing the bank after you do that. That's why they do that. So if I have an usher and you see somebody that you've never seen at your church before, engage them in conversation. We're a welcoming area in churches, right? So you want to say, hey, how you doing? I've never seen you at our parish before. What brings you in today? It's great. I'm glad you're here to celebrate with us. That's a very non-threatening conversation, but it might be enough to say to that person, hey, they've already picked me out, that I'm not from here, or that something might be going on. And then if they come in and it's something that really gives you that bad feeling, a hair on the back of your neck, call law enforcement. We don't have to come charging in with our guns right to the middle of your mass. But at least you can get us there and go, hey, listen, there's just something about this. Can you hang out and make sure nothing, that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of options for churches. But like you said, it's a passion. Guns are a passionate issue. There are people who feel very strongly on both ends of the spectrum. Yes?
Is this presentation today part of a nationwide presentation, or is it for this area? I'm kind of into the area.
So there are a lot of different groups who have different trainings. There's ALICE, there's the government's program of Run, Hide, Fight, which is a different variation of this. So, these are all businesses and people who advocate different things. This discussion, I can promise you though, is going on nationwide. Just because of Parkland and a lot of the things that are happening in our country and the media attention it gets. Like I said, I've got 27 presentations scheduled between now and the end of April. This is in high demand. I can't speak for other jurisdictions and how they're dealing with that. When I went to this presentation, I felt it was really good information, and I thought that it would be really well received by this community. And I thought it would be something, I had a business owner that we were in discussions about doing this for his clientele or for his employees, and he said, I just think it's going to scare them, and I don't want to cause them to be scared. And I said, well, do you watch the news? Yeah. If your folks get on the internet at all, if they watch the news ever, even if they talk to people in their community, this conversation is going on. And people are going to be worried about it and talking about what we can do about it. This training and having discussions like this give people proactive measures that they can take to try to help themselves if they find themselves in a situation. It actually kind of eases their mind a little bit because we've given them something that they can do rather than just hide under a table and hope for the best. So it is a nationwide discussion, just maybe not necessarily this exact program.
Yeah, would you have a handout from today? Like, I'd like to actually send it out, even a brief little thing.
I will, I'll give you, I got a box of my cards here. If you, do you do email? Do you have an email?
Yeah.
Okay, if you shoot me an email, I'll give you, so there's a website for this program.
Okay.
You can watch the video we watched at the end and some different
Yeah.
things, so I can give you that information. If you shoot me an email, I'll reply to you with the websites, and you know, if you have a group that you think would benefit from a presentation like this, April's really busy for me, like I said, but after that, you know, I can start looking at some other dates when we can do it. And it doesn't have to be a big group. You know, I've done this for 4 or 5 people for their groups.
Well, actually, I used to work at a senior center in a different state. And,
Okay.
And I was just going to forward that information to them because I thought it would be important.
So the alert group is a nationwide group. So there are trainings all over the country that are doing this, and a lot of times local sheriff's departments, if they do, another group is an ALICE, it's called. I don't know what the acronym exactly stands for, but it's another program like this. And typically local sheriff's departments, because it is in such high demand, are doing something that they can offer the
And
community.
this one's called what? I'm sorry.
Crase. This is Civilian Response to Active Shooter
yeah,
Events.
that's
It's
right.
done through the ALERT program, ALERRT. Yes.
Thank you.
In the video, you showed this, the shooter was opening his bag.
Right.
And there was that worker that saw him. Now, let's say he was carrying. Should he confront the shooter?
I can't make that decision for that person,
Would it
right?
be better for the situation, in that situation, you confronted with a weapon before you got his other weapon? Would that be a better situation than waiting until...
If you feel that that you are in imminent danger of serious risk or death, then you are allowed to use your firearm to defend yourself. Would it be better? I don't have the answer to that because there's 10,000 different things that could happen with that. If I can tell you as a police officer, if I have a firearm and I see somebody pulling out a gun in the middle of Walmart, I'm probably going to address that threat with my firearm. Just because it's a deadly force threat and it's a deadly force response. But the thing you have to remember, right? Open carry is legal in the state of Michigan. So just because somebody walks into Walmart with a holstered pistol, we shouldn't be tackling that person, right? That a lot of times can be a very legal way to carry your pistol. So that threatening aspect, and whether you think that threat to yourself or others is imminent and life-threatening, is the...
But instead of him running, like he knew that this was a problem, and he was running away to tell everybody, but if he had a weapon, he could have confronted the guy, and maybe that would have stopped it from even starting.
He could have, but...
Yeah, I'm just saying, if he did have a weapon, would it have been better, or would it have been better for him to run and tell everybody?
So, there's so... I feel like myself in the academy talking to the prosecuting attorney in my criminal law class. There's so many caveats to that. So if he has a weapon, how comfortable is he with that? Has he had an honest discussion with himself about taking a person's life? All right? It's great for us to carry our gun, but when you strap that on, have you thought about the implications of using that firearm, right? It's a deadly force response, right? So we have a high likelihood of very serious injury of death if we use our firearm. If you're carrying your gun, this is a conversation that you should be having with yourself, right? We have police officers that we bring that up in the academy and you get eyes that go like this. If you're a police officer, you have to be prepared to use this weapon to defend yourself or others. If you don't believe that you can do that, or you feel not maybe very strong in your skill set, like, hey, he's 20 feet away, I don't know if I can make that shot, right? Because there's one or two things. He's either going to throw his hands up and lay down on the ground, he's going to run, or he's going to pull his gun out and try to take you on. So it really depends on your evaluation of the circumstances, how you feel your skill set is, whether or not you're prepared to take on that, or you feel you'd be more effective by running away and getting as many people out of the store as possible. Yes?
Is open carry just handguns or is that rifles too?
You can open carry rifles as well.
And I was told the other day, same meeting I was telling you about the church, that the only place you can't carry a gun is the courthouse.
Well, that is one of the places you can't carry a gun. But it really depends on what... It really depends on the circumstances, right? So if you have a CPL, there are pistol-free zones that you can't carry in, right? However, if you open carry that firearm and you have a valid CPL, you can open carry it. Now, the other caveat to that is if that person says, or the school has a policy that says no weapons at all, right? Because we had this a couple times out in the county. Parent with a valid CPL comes in with a holstered firearm to a game, and we get called. There's a gun in school, right? And he's right. He's able to carry that firearm open carry with a valid CPL unless there is a policy from the school that says no weapons allowed on our campus, and then he can be asked to leave because it covers that.
Well, you're saying open carry with a concealed weapons permit,
right.
But what if you don't have an open weapon?
You're still allowed to carry a firearm, but every business has their outlook.
So you can carry one in here.
I believe there's a sign on the door that says no weapons allowed. Right. So in here, you have a sign that says no weapons in here. So technically in here you would not be able to. You know, but in businesses are private too. So let's say you go into Taco Bell and the manager of Taco Bell says, you know what, we don't want you, we want to refuse your business because you have a firearm on your hip. They have the legal right to do that, and you would be asked to leave. So it's really up to that area whether or not they want to allow firearms in.
Well, you know, I noticed in several different federal facilities and institutions like veterans clinics and veterans hospitals, they have signs that says, I wonder if that was a federal offense if they did have a weapon in that area, or would it just be dismissed by the security of the building?
I'm sure there are legal ramifications for bringing that into a federal building. I have no doubt. I don't know what it is specifically, but I'm sure there are legal ramifications for that. Yes.
This is just kind of a thought, but I think where I have a problem is, like you were just talking about Taco Bell. If you see somebody come in with a gun, you don't know if they're a good person with a license or if they're a bad person. They can.
Right.
So, you know, what do? You just keep staring at him and watching him to make sure he's not going to try to use
well,
it.
that is your option. If it makes you go ahead.
Myers right now. I go in there for my prescription.
Right.
I've seen 3 or 4 different men in there carrying.
Yep.
Where is this?
Myers.
Oh, yeah, like you don't know that, right? So
You don't.
really
I mean,
don't know.
obviously, the way our laws are built, we're hoping that they were allowed to purchase a firearm, so they are not a convicted felon or things like that. But you know, just like with all criminals, you know, you can make as much legislation as you want. You know, marijuana is illegal unless you have a card, and methamphetamine is illegal, but we still get a ton of that, right? So there are ways around it. I'm here to tell you the majority of the time, if you're open carrying, a criminal is not going to open carry in just a natural setting. Why? Because it calls a ton of attention to them, right? And a lot of times we as law enforcement get calls about that. So if they're going to be carrying a firearm and they have some sort of underlying reason to do that is not, you know, in accordance with the law, they're going to conceal that pistol, right? A lot of times if they shouldn't be carrying, it's illegal for them to possess it anyway, so they don't want you to know they have it. So typically they're not going to just open carry it there in a holster. You know, they would be trying to hide it. The majority of the people who open carry are law-abiding citizens who want to carry their pistol out in the open.
How strict are the rules in Michigan as far as people being able to just go in and get a handgun?
Well, you have to do a NICS check, just like everything else. You have to be 21 to buy from a dealer, and you can be 18 and purchase from a private individual, but you still have to have a license to purchase. When they come to our office for a license to purchase, they still go through that same NICS check. So they have to do the federal government check.
Come to you first
Yes.
before they go to someplace to
Yes,
buy it.
but FFLs can do it right on scene. So and then if you have a valid CPL, you've already gone through all that background stuff. So they can go in and just buy a pistol, you know, right away without that background check because they have a valid CPL. Or if you're a police officer, a certified police officer. But you do, I mean, we have the same federal background check that everybody else has to go through. Yes?
Could you give a little statistics on gun-free zones since Columbine, the percentage and the numbers?
Well, I don't have percentages or numbers off the top of my head, Dave, but I can tell you that, you know, the majority of these acts are perpetrated in places where, you know, there typically aren't people there to counter them with firearms. And typically when they're confronted by a police officer, I know there's some debate right now about the most recent one, whether or not he actually committed suicide or was shot by the police officer. There's some debate on whether or not he might have But typically, if they're confronted with somebody, with a police officer or somebody with a firearm, that's typically the end of the incident. So I don't have statistics or numbers for you, Dave, but I know that typically, if you can get somebody with a gun to confront that threat to do it, you know, that can be a highly effective way of dealing with a shooter. Yes?
I keep asking all kinds of questions.
That's fine.
When I was in Owasso, we were in Owasso 5 years ago, we went to an open carry picnic at a city park.
Yep.
And there was 30, 40 people there with guns on it. And I said, did you guys have to get permission? He said, well, we called the city hall and he said, open carry, you can carry open carry anywhere you want except like in city hall or something.
Right.
He said, you don't need permission to carry. And that was guys like Rifleman many years ago had a big 30-30, you know.
Right. Yep.
Is it loaded? Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but there's things that you have to remember, right? Open carrying, so if I have, like my pistol would be considered open carry right now, right? But if I sit down in my vehicle, it's now considered concealed in the state of Michigan. So those those open carry people would have to secure their firearm in their vehicle in coordinates with the Michigan law for transporting firearms. Then they can get out and put it on their hip and carry it. But that's one common misconception is people say I'm open carrying, but they're driving down the road. That's not the case. As soon as you get in a vehicle, that's not open carry anymore. That's concealed carry. So
do the bad guys know that?
Well,
so if somebody's going to rob you,
the ones I've met, we learned them pretty quick. But
the bad guys always hide their guns.
That's just it. You know, the bad guys aren't going to say I've got a gun on my hip or have it displayed. They're going to have it concealed. Yes, sir.
Without the CPL now, it's your open carry.
Yeah.
And you're going to take your pistol in the car. Do you have to have that locked?
Yes.
You know, locked in a case?
Yep. It's got to be cased and it's separate from the ammunition and all the stuff, just like your motorcycle. Right. Yep. So, any other questions? I really appreciate you guys coming. I know I lost a lot of people towards the end here, but I appreciate y'all coming. It's an important conversation. Thank you. Yep, thanks.
This is something you're never going to see on CNN. There's a FedEx driver who obviously is quite experienced backing a semi into a loading dock. This is across the street from me. Almost looks like that garbage hopper is in the way. Be nice if we can get it right up to the thing. They probably have pews or something in there. There it goes. Now he's getting it. He should have somebody up front telling this guy he's got room. Go back. Go back. Little bit, and he's got to back up just a little bit more. The bomber in Austin, Texas got confronted and he killed himself, a coward. Guess he realized facing a judge was going to be a lot more scary than facing Satan. Oh, what? Smell. I have Bubby. Bubby. Checking out a plant.
Not common sense, more like calm down sense.
Well, it's almost 5:30 on the first day of spring. Bubby knows how to celebrate holidays. Look how his coat shines. Take a nap. Hey, pal. Hey, look at me. Hey. Bubby, if he ever gets lost, I would put an ad in the paper. It does not answer to his name. His name is Bubby, but he does not answer that name. No, any other name. His goal in life is to be lazy. Honey Cat, on the other hand, she's taking her nap, or she's been resting here in the living room. Honey Cat, huh?
Think forward.
Kitty, kitty. Honey Cat. This cat has got very, very long fur. She keeps it really clean and shiny. It's not really shiny like the other cat. How can it be when it's so soft and fluffy? She does spend a lot of time cleaning. Hey, Honey Cat. I'm talking to you, Honey Cat. Honey Cat, kitty. Honey Cat also does not call and come when called, does not look when called. I don't know if that's good for a cat or what. Bubby is now in the back of the chair I use. Bubby, look at me. Bubby. Bubby, kitty. Bubby. You don't answer when somebody call you, do you? Bubby. Hey. Black cat. Hey. Bubby. I can holler at him until my voice is hoarse. Bubby. Can you hear me? Huh? Now I've gotten in front of Bubby. He still won't look at me. Unless he wants a treat. They get these treats in the store. They're beef or something. He loves them. Begs and begs and begs. But when I want something, oh no. Hey. Bubby. He won't even look at me. That's incidental. Pretty kitty, you know that, huh? A handsome cat. Hairball. Way back under the chair, Honey Cat. Buzzball. Her hair is about 2 inches long. I think that when God created DNA molecule for cats, every hair follicle, millions of them, has a separate little code. So there's her nose hairs, 1/10 of an inch. Back here, they're 2 inches. Good evening. This is the first day of spring. From where I am, I want to get to setting sun, but I think it's going to go behind those houses before where I can see the sunset. I think it's about 7:30, I'm not sure. Well, I moved up into the sidewalk in front of the tabernacle. A little chilly out here tonight. Got my Carhartt on, it's still a little chilly. Oh, I moved again. The sun is just about to go down behind that house. Tomorrow night I should go down to the beach. And I can see it on the horizon, but I guess I was just too lazy tonight. I'll make note of the time and go down to the beach tomorrow night. Because the sun will set about 2 minutes later. Today the sun is right over the equator. Today is first day of spring. In South America, it's the first day of fall. Well, they still call it spring, but we would call it fall down there. Be very confused if you lived, say, within 50 miles of the equator. So actually fall, or spring, first day of spring is worldwide. All over the place. See, the sun is going down. Hi, how are you? That's where I live.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm recording the setting sun.
Oh, okay. I had to say, kind of disturb my mama and shit.
It's going right down now.
Okay.
Within a couple minutes, you won't be able to see it.
Okay.
Tomorrow, if I want to get a better shot, I'm going to go down to the beach. Because it's still not set if
I
I'm...
didn't know you was. I didn't know you was in there until I just woke up.
Oh, okay, well, sure. I won't be able to get the effect that I get if I'm on the beach, but I can still get the sun setting. I now have the camera on auto exposure. So you can see from here, you can see the highway. It's about 2 blocks, 3 blocks, I don't know. You want to get an idea what it really looks like. This is what it really looks like. Even though light travel is at 186,000 miles an hour, excuse me, miles per second. Big difference. So it takes 9 minutes for it to get here. So when you think about it, really, the sun is already below the horizon. But because it takes so long to get here, it looks like it's still there. I would not have told you that if I didn't think you wanted to know. There's a few seconds and the sun disappear. Then we got to go and see if the cats are doing okay. I had 2 cats, they're both lazy. As you know, if you watch my stuff, you'll know neither one of them come when called. They don't even look when called. I can call them by name and they don't even look at me. Their attitude is if you want somebody to look at you, you should have got a dog. Cats look at dogs with total disdain. See over here, you can see a little bit of, probably would have been a beautiful sunset tonight if I'd gone over the lake. See, the sun's going down between those buildings now. It threw me off guard. Well, the president made the Democrats mad again today. He got out of bed. We're getting a lot more sun than I thought we were going to get. Because I'm lined up right here just by accident between a couple buildings. It takes about 4 minutes for the sun to go its diameter. If you look at it from one spot, when it starts to when it ends, it's about 4 minutes. Well, okay, same with the moon. Relative to what we look at, it's the same speed. Although the moon is 250,000 miles away, the sun is 93 million miles. So it's about 400 times as far.